Right here we are with Shashank Shekhar. How are you today, Mr. Shekhar?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So you are the CEO and founder of Insta Mortgage,
Yes, I
and
am.
we definitely want to get into that as well. But I heard a story that you moved here in 2006, 2000, and in 2008, you decided to start your business with $1,900. And so I kind of want to get the timeline from that kind of to where we are now because it's very interesting to me.
It is. Yes, yes. I came to the U.S. in 2006. I was head of ops for a business. I got transferred here to the U.S. I was head of business for them. We were a VC funded company, so I came here with all the excitement and everything that's going to happen right for me. And I was in Silicon Valley. So as I said, it was like everything that you hoped for was to just about to come true. But we were in the mortgage space, and we all know what happened in 2007. The company shut down about 12, 16 months later after I was here. So what, I was 18 months in the country, as you said, $1,900 in savings, and I literally knew only three people in the entire country back then, and those three people were my coworkers who got just fired with me in the company that just shut down. And all of us probably know that mortgage was probably the dirtiest word on the planet. I mean, nobody
Yeah.
wanted to talk about mortgage because it was the mortgage meltdown which was causing all the problem there was. So yeah, a lot of headwinds, as you can imagine, both from a personal angle, the fact that I was completely new to a country, from financial angle, the fact that I didn't have too much savings, and of course, just I don't know, the stupidity of trying to think that I can start a mortgage business in a year like '08. So that's what my story is. That's how I got started.
Wow. Wow. So you were in so '06. You were already in the mortgage industry
I was
at that
the
time?
business that I was part of. I didn't own that business. I was an employee of
Okay.
that business, but yeah, we were in the mortgage space, so I knew a little about mortgages, and that's why when I thought of starting my own company, I was like, okay, the only thing I know how to run or how to do in the US is mortgages. So what? Everything is falling around me and the world is coming to an end. That's the only thing I know. So
Yeah.
let's give it a shot. Let's see how it
Okay.
goes.
Well, it seems to have worked. What were you doing before you moved here?
I went to a business school, did my MBA in marketing, then worked for GE Capital after that. That was my first job after my grad school, doing my MBA. And then actually went to work for a startup. I go from this huge organization with hundreds and thousands, if not millions of employees that General Electric has across the world, to this tiny startup where I was employee number two. And the reason was that I wanted to first work for a large company to understand how big companies operate, and then I wanted to work with a small company so that I could see how do they scale up the company, because eventually I wanted to start my own business. So it was all thought through. It was all
Yeah.
planned leading up to the fact that, hey, I go to the US, I'll probably know this will become one fancy startup worth, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars or something. And then eventually I'll carve out and I'll start my own business. So everything was planned until then. But I was in the financial services space even before I came to the US. That's where I worked for GE, and then the startup which then moved me to the US.
Okay, awesome. You know that it's amazing that you came in, you started your own company. You're here, and that's fascinating by itself. But it's amazing all the other stuff, like all the other hats that you wear. I mean, you do podcasts, and you have newsletters to go out. You're in AI, Insta offers now.
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you've gotten into as kind of one why
Mhm.
did you just not settle with just the mortgage company?
Sure, sure.
And then in going forward, like what interested you in these other ventures as well?
Yeah, let me back up a little and go from, so instead of just going from 2008 directly to 2023, let's kind of take the audience back into my journey from what happened when I started the company and what has led me to what I'm doing right now. So '08, as you would probably guess, is I struggled quite a lot
Yeah.
because of everything that was happening. And as I said, it's probably a stupid move, maybe a little bit brave, but mostly stupid. Is because, I mean, you need to think through stuff, and I didn't, because I was like, I'm doing all of this to start my own company. So what? It's '08, and so what? I have all these headwinds. But it also, the good thing about sometimes when you have your backs against the wall is that it makes you a little inventive. And that's what
Mhm.
happened to me, is that because I had nothing going for me, I could not just trend, big shift that was happening when people were moving away from, say, reading newspapers or watching television to consuming information online. And I wanted to tap into that. I always wanted education to be a platform for me building my business, because coming into '08, I could see that how homeowners were impacted because of lack of education.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know what they were signing into, and that maybe caused, that was definitely a reason, or a part of the reason what caused the mortgage meltdown, is because consumers were completely uneducated. So I always wanted education to be a platform on which I wanted to build my business. But you also needed a medium, right? What kind of medium do you want to use? And for me, I mean, if I look back, the timing was perfect because online consumption was just taking off. So I started blogging in '09. I was one of the first 5, 6 mortgage bloggers probably back then.
Wow.
So inventive for sure, but also, as I said, my backs were against the wall, and I had to find a way to get myself out of that hole. So that's kind of was the first thing I started working on, and it took me, Brandon. I think I was blogging, I was writing blogs probably 3 or 4 times a week, 6 months straight before I got my first call, like somebody who actually said that they have read one of my blogs. So that got me kind of going. But
I don't mean to interrupt, but that is like such a good piece of information to someone who's out there. Even like now, maybe it's not blogging, maybe it's just content creation in general, doing videos and things like that, and going, hey, put my video out. I put 15 out and nothing hit. So I just wanted to take a side note on like how consistent you were on that.
Yes, huge learning on content creation is because the year might be different now, and people might be using different medium, or people might be using different channel for their content publishing. So it doesn't matter what the platforms are, but the learning remains the same, is that content creation is a long-form commitment. It's not something that happens overnight. Is that not something that, for example, if somebody, I mean, look me up, say, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years after I was blogging, and said, how come I am not getting the same success as Shashank did? But dude, you haven't put in 5 years of work, and that with the kind of discipline I did. So no, that's a big lesson in any kind of content creation, and practically any kind of year. I mean, it's whether it's 2023 or 2009 or whenever you're doing it. But it also kind of taught me the fact that anything which has long-term consequences, long-term positive output, needs to also have at least a medium-term input into it. Okay. You don't get that. You don't get that kind of success with. I mean, people get viral videos all the time, but really not something that you see in our industry in a consistent basis. And then that also got me into the fact that I wanted to build this entire business out of the fact that I want people to call me instead of me calling people, in the sense that I wanted to build that inbound marketing platform, so to say, where people were working with me because of my expertise, because of my credibility. And you have to showcase that expertise and credibility. A lot of people in the industry are experts and have credibility, but they don't showcase in any way. They don't produce videos, or they don't write blogs, or so there's no way for your audience to know, which is your prospects, your buyers, your borrowers, whosoever they are, that you actually have credibility, that you actually understand this stuff. And the funny thing is that I was teaching, I don't know, thousands and thousands of real estate agents how to be online, how to do YouTube marketing, or how to be writing blogs. And they would come to me, say, after 2 weeks, and they say, this thing doesn't work. is because it doesn't work in 2 weeks, right? But investment into personal branding is one of the biggest investments you can make, and mostly out of time. And the great thing is that technology has become so inexpensive that you don't have to be putting tens and thousands of dollars into content generation. But so that's how the journey has started, so to say, from a personal branding perspective, and then evolved onto me speaking, and then writing books, and now I write for Forbes and Inc. and Entrepreneur and some of the biggest publications on the planet, and everything else that you mentioned.
Well, yeah, that is incredible. And as far as the branding goes, personal branding, is this story correct as well? Is that people kept calling you Shawshank instead of Shashank? So because the name of your podcast is Shashank Redemption, correct?
It is, and it's interesting is that even with as difficult a name that I have for a country like US, people would still kind of associate to me quickly because of the famous movie Shawshank Redemption, right? So I, of course, don't take it negatively. In fact, I find that I have been able to use that name branding advantage, so,
Yeah.
so to say. As you said, my podcast is called Shashank Redemption. My Instagram handle is shashank.redemption. So is my Threads channel, my website. So yeah, I've kind of built my personal branding around the Shashank Redemption name, which is, some people tell me that's a clever take on the famous movie, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to like, because what that tells me is that you're able to like adjust and ingest like the feedback to
Yes.
you. And it's
Yes.
instead of you just fighting that off, you're like, hey, well, if this is what people are going to recognize with this, like
Yes, of course.
double, triple down on it. So that's cool that you've been able to do that. So now we're coming back to now that you've kind of built your brand, you're teaching agents how to build their own brand. After 2 weeks, did you have anybody that went further than just a couple weeks and like kind of made a name for themselves at all?
Yeah, I mean, some people had the discipline to do that, and of course, they did much better in terms of what they got out of it. But it is sometimes frustrating to see that you teach this to hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the country, and maybe 1%, 2% of them will actually act on it. The other 98% won't, and that's why it's important that you are not in that 98%, right? You are in that 1 or 2% who actually takes the action to execute it. And I mean, as I said, technology these days has simplified content generation so much, is that you're not doing it now. I mean, that's not an excuse. Which, like in 2009, for example, I had to learn some of the HTML coding because you couldn't blog even if you had to make the letter bold or italic, you had to do a little bit of HTML. I mean, I don't have technical background, something. So you had to learn so much more. I mean, I had to know how to create my own WordPress site, how to pick themes, how to publish blogs. I mean, these days you can do that literally in 15 seconds. You can go to Medium, you can go to anywhere, and blog. So it's so much easier. But I think we have evolved from there, and that's why I think your question around the fact that now you run a mortgage company, there is so much of AI element to it and everything else. I think all of this still comes from the same philosophy that I had in 2009. So the intrinsic philosophy still remains the same, which is we need to be different. We need to be building, whether it's a company or my personal brand, or even recruiting other loan officers to our company. The intrinsic philosophy or the guiding philosophy still remains the same, which is we want to be constantly adding value to our audience. And how we add value, that changes over a period of time, right? But you need to be constantly adding value. And that's what it is that when in 2009, for example, I wanted the borrowers to work with me, my adding value was, look, I'm writing these blogs that's educating you how to get a mortgage when nobody else in the country is. Or in, say, 2009, I wanted to work with real estate agents. I was doing all these educational classes on how to use YouTube or how to use blogging for their own personal branding. That was my value add to them. And so I went from, say, 0 real estate agents in my database to 500 referring real estate agents 3 years later, is because I was adding value to that, right? Similarly, now we are talking about growing the organization, Insta Mortgage. It's the same thing, is that how do we continue to add value? And that comes from what AI is capable of. And that's why we are so invested into AI, both in terms of not just internally what we are doing at Insta Mortgage, but actually giving free classes to, again, thousands of real estate agents and loan officers across the country, and trying to teach them. I know only 1 or 2% will take action and will do something about it. But I've always had this goal, is that I'm not just doing it for myself, but I'm trying to drive the entire industry together. And then that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I like that you bring up the fact that the value changes, right? Because especially now with consumers with so many options now to get a lot of information, where value could have been like in 2009, like your blog in 2009 might not stand up to what they could find on 1,000 different places right now. And we talk about that also as well when what is value? Like when I go to a title rep or something and I get a zip code map, like I get that with a branded pen, like they're giving me something, but is it necessarily value? At one point, it probably was very valuable, but it's staying the same. And as you're talking about differentiation, and when it comes to differentiation, what do you feel that agents or even loan officers, like what stops them from trying to be different? in your opinion?
Let's talk about value for a second there.
Okay.
You hit upon a really good point, is because one of my favorite business books is Psychology of Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Okay.
He talks about 6 principles of influence, and on the face of it, they're very basic principles, and people would say, "Oh yes, of course we know that." And one of his first principle is law of reciprocity, or principle of reciprocity, which is if you give something, then people tend to give something in return. But the problem with giving something is that one of the things that when people read the book and they kind of miss that point is giving by itself is not good enough. Are you giving something of value, right? So if you're giving somebody a pen, I mean, you are thinking, oh, I'm giving somebody a pen, but that pen might be of no value to me, or not enough value for me to think about, oh, I should give something back to this person as well.
Okay.
Right. So when you were thinking of law of reciprocity, is we need to be thinking about, there are really 2 things that Robert Cialdini talks about, and which has driven a lot of my business decisions, is that one is it should be unexpected, and 2, it should be of value. It's not always something that, oh, I of course expected him to, even if it's something of value, I expected him to do that, right? So if you're a real estate agent and you are driving your buyers around, that's expected of you. It's kind of part of your job. So even though you're thinking you're adding value, probably they expect you to do that anyway, right? So that's probably not unexpected, even though it might be of something of value. So we should always be thinking about this, is that when we're trying to get people to give something in back to us, are you giving something of value? So when I was doing, for example, 2009, when there was, even though people wanted to read more stuff online, there wasn't so much of content online. So when they were discovering my blog, so to say, it was something of value, because now they could figure out the home buying process or whatever question they had from one of the blogs that I had written. Maybe the same thing of not as much value today. I mean, it's because the times are changing. But to the second part of your question, or actually you only had one question, which is what prevents, say, real estate agents or loan officers or anyone in our industry, because I see the real estate industry as it's kind of one industry, is it prevents people from doing this, is because I think there are a couple of reasons. One is people don't want to be out there. People believe that they will be judged if they were publishing any kind of content, right? People would look at it and will comment in a way or think of them in a way that's not the way they want to be thought about, right? So, and that goes back to basic human evolution. We never, I mean, social acceptance is something that as humans we crave, right? Yeah. Social unacceptance or social rejection is not something we want. And putting content out there opens you to potential social rejection, and not something we want. So that's just the fear of rejection, or fear of, hey, this is not good enough, so to say, kind of a thing, right? The second is the discipline to do that, right? As I mentioned, most people have, probably more than 1 to 2% of people have tried it, right? But most people let it go after they don't get what they think should be the desired result in a short period of time. And they let it go. Third could just be the fact that they don't know what to create, right? It's just that, hey, I want to create videos or I want to write blogs, but I don't know what to do. And that's where some of the AI things that you and I have been part of, teaching some of the ChatGPT classes in terms of helping with some of those things, right? So there could be multiple reasons why people think that may not that's something that they should be doing. I would assume that most people at least think that this is something they should be working on. But those are probably, I would say, the top 3 reasons why people are not doing it.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. And what's funny is that you mentioned like not getting sometimes they say, hey, no news is good news and stuff like that. But when you make a post and there's no reaction or no likes, we automatically go, oh, yes. That's like, and so for a period of time, I was writing short story. Well, for Facebook, it was long stories, but I was writing short stories almost daily. And I was getting so much reaction outside. Like I'd be at the soccer field. Like I would get the first few people were like, oh, wow, I can't believe you shared this. But then they started dying off on the reactions that I would get online, because it would be like, oh, it's another story. But then I started seeing people out at my daughter's soccer games and like pulling me aside and be like, hey, remember, it's like grabbing his son and said, hey, I shared your story with my son. Hey, here's the guy who wrote that I shared with you. But it was like those things that you weren't expecting from that. So, I mean, I just wanted to jump on that, is where there's positive that may come from a spot that you had no idea that it was coming from.
And that is so very well said, is because sometimes when you post on social media, we are looking for social media reactions, and we don't even know how many people are actually watching it. They are just not reacting.
Yeah.
So you are still, and you're right. I mean, people, I meet people at conferences like, oh, I love the work you're doing, and I'm such a big fan of you, and they have probably never liked any of my posts.
Yeah.
Never.
Yep.
But they're all still watching it. They're still seeing what you're doing. So just because you're not getting the reaction on the platform where you're posting something, do not always assume that it's not working. And that's why you have to play the long-term game, is because after a point of time, people start talking about it, even if it's offline, saying, hey, really, I mean, I see what you're doing, great work or whatever, even though you see 2 likes on Facebook, for example. Don't always discount the fact that people might still be noticing it. You might still be reaching the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. A great point. And like you said, you never know who you're actually reaching just by sharing yourself out there. And I kind of like to get on this topic, because I've when I wrote a book, this isn't a plug for me writing a book or anything like that, but I wrote one, and it was for real estate agents. And the person who reached out to me on Facebook called me right away and was like, hey, you made my day because of this. It was completely not even in the book, what for its intention at all. I never thought that it would be what it was actually for. So we touched on AI briefly. That's something you've been teaching a lot of classes and getting in front of a lot of agents with that. I get a lot of responses on AI, even the ones that we've done together, where people are like, agents mainly, I like to write my own descriptions. And a lot of people stop it at and I get the plagiarism stuff and things like that I'll get responses for that. But you shared just one example of, I can't remember the name of the software, but the AI will actually simulate your ad.
Yes.
To tell you hey, you needed a different shade of blue and things like that.
Cortex.
It's Cortex. That's what it was. But like that type of stuff, like what are you using AI in other than just descriptions and writing a bio or even a blog?
Yeah, writing content is a big part of Gen AI, right? I mean, what ChatGPT, the reason why it became so popular is because it's generative AI, so it's able to create content for you, and you're able to talk in the natural language model, so it seems like you're texting a friend, and then ChatGPT is able to give you answer. Of course, now we have Gen AI, multiple companies. I mean, Adobe has built a brilliant Gen AI platform where you can edit your pictures by just telling Adobe how to edit pictures, right? Like remove Brandon from the background or whatever, and Adobe will do that for you. It's a paid model, but to your point is that yes, it's way more than writing. First of all, the writing itself. I'm not saying you have to get ChatGPT or any of whether you use Copy.ai or Jasper. There are few copywriting AI models which are out there. You can do it 2 ways, which is one, you can write it and then you can ask it to make it better. And if what it does doesn't sound better to you, that's fine. You can go back to your original version. Or vice versa, is you can get it to write it and then fix it and make it better in the tone that you want. Having said that, I mean, most of the AI platforms, especially ChatGPT, can clone your style, right? So you can feed it saying, this is my style of writing. Moving forward, you should write everything in this way. That's called role prompting. So what role prompting means is that you can tell ChatGPT to be someone. That person could be Snoop Dogg, or it could be you, or whosoever it is. You say that you need to behave in a certain fashion, and it'll behave in certain fashion, which means it can understand what your tone is, what style that you write in. It can do that. But Cortex, you mentioned the one other brilliant tool, which so far, I mean, any kind of ads that you wanted to run, the popular thing that most internet marketers do is called A/B testing, where you test 2 different forms of advertising, maybe with different buttons, different call to action, whatever you wanted to test, and see which one got more response, and probably put more money into that specific ad copy. Cortex makes A/B testing a thing of the past, meaning instead of you running the test, Cortex looks at millions of ads that have been run in the past and the kind of responses it has received. And because of all the information that it has, its AI can predict, even before you are running the test, or running the ad, saying if this ad will do well or not. And if it says that it won't do well, it actually gives you a recommendation that your call to action should change or your color of the CTA button should change. And not just for the ads, it can do that for social media posts as well. So if you're not getting the kind of engagement that you thought that you should get, maybe try Cortex and see if it gives you feedback on how to fix it and gets you a little bit more engagement. There are multiple, I mean, Microsoft came up with designer.microsoft.com, I think. That's one platform that I've been loving in the sense that it's not just a content creator, but it actually designs the full image. So, for example, if you asked it to do, say, Instagram design for 4th of July post, it does not write the post. It actually creates the image, the entire graphic.
Oh, wow.
And you can prompt it saying, I'm a real estate agent. So it'll probably give you some real estate feel around it. So now you don't have to design it. So Canva itself had made it so much easier to do graphic designing.
Yeah.
And now designer.microsoft does practically nothing. You have to write one sentence and you download the design and you post it to Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever you want to. And there are multiple such platforms. Really is something that I have been playing with, but some of these are completely mind blowing in what it can do. So yeah, the AI, even if you just use it for Gen AI, which is generative AI, to generate content, there are so many really, really powerful tools, which goes way beyond just listing description, as you mentioned. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
so
funny because that's the biggest response I got was that.
Right.
And the other one is I kind of want to touch on a little bit too. Like, what do you say to people who are very fearful of AI and they're like, oh, it's Terminator all over, like this, like Terminator was like a documentary, like this is what's happening, like get ready. They get nervous about it.
Yeah. No, and there is a reason to get nervous, and I totally understand where they're coming from. Is that in the beginning I was a little shocked in the sense that all the thing it is capable of is like, okay, what used to take me, for example, hours to do something, it can do it in minutes. I'll give you an example. I was trying to, I'd written a paperback called My First Home, which is a book for first-time home buyers. It was a bestseller on Amazon. So I converted that into an ebook so that so the people who are visiting my website can download it for free, because my goal with the book was never to make money, but actually to get it in more hands. But I wanted to build a quiz on top of it. So I was like, okay, I mean, how do I know that people actually read it and understood everything? Now, I could have sat there and I don't know, would have taken me 4 or 5 hours to build 20 questions quiz on first-time home buying and everything. And I throw it in ChatGPT saying, hey, here are the topics that I've written in the book. Based on these topics, can you generate 20 multiple choice questions so that I can build it as a quiz for first-time home buyers to test their knowledge? I mean, 90 seconds later, I have 20 questions. Not all of them were perfect. I think I had to fix 3 or 4 questions, change some of the options. But instead of 4 hours, I could now get it done in 5 minutes, maybe tops, because I could edit some questions and get it done. So I think that's why I was like, okay, this can do so much. But instead of being fearful of something, and we have done that over and over again with any new technology, is that being fearful of something is not going to help you in any way. And if being fearful is only going to keep you behind compared to the people who are embracing it and adopting it, is because one question that get asked all the time is that, will the AI replace the loan officers or the real estate agents? My answer always has been is that no, the AI will not replace a real estate agent, but real estate agents who use AI will probably replace or definitely will do better than the real estate agents who are not. So being fearful, I mean, makes no sense. I mean, to compare it to Terminator or something. I know there are some people who are talking about the fact that AI will eventually wipe out the humanity, and who knows, that may or may not happen. But as of now, I guess the important part is that how can you use AI to become more productive and become more efficient and help you generate more leads and close more leads. And AI by itself, even with this being a very new technology, is already capable of doing all of that. And if you are not ahead of the curve, meaning you're not learning all of this now, you will eventually be forced to. Like, I don't know anyone who can't use internet anymore or can't use iPhone or does not know how to download and use apps. But were you forced to do that, or did you do that when it came out? And that's the thing about AI, is that if you are able to get ahead of the curve and become an early adopter in 2023, then in 2025, you will be beating everybody to it, versus you start using it in 2025 and now you're behind the curve. So goes to the same thing about my blogging in 2009. And you could be blogging in 2009 or you could be blogging in 2014. The results are very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how you say that it's, it's a tool.
Yes.
And you're right. The people that get good at it will be like, you can give me the best like artistic tools in the world and I can't paint anything or draw anything. And you can give my daughter like a worn down pencil and she's going to draw something completely amazing.
Sure.
And it's the person's skill set behind using that tool as well. So I like how you put that. In the mortgage industry, how have you used kind of maybe outside the box or anything that you've used AI for outside of like ChatGPT and things like that?
Yeah, this is the two kinds of AI that we are working on is generative AI. A lot of that we talked about already, and then the large language model. So what large language model basically means is that you can take a large amount of data and be able to get intelligent information out of it, which was very hard to build before this, is because there was not enough capability to be able to read large documents and be able to generate information out of that. So people had to break down the information into 2-page documents or 3-page documents, and even then it was clunky. But OpenAI and maybe you saw the when they launched the 4.0 version, is that when they were demonstrating the launch, one of the examples that they had, live example by the way, the model was able to take 1,800 pages of tax code, which is the IRS tax code, and be able to answer based on 1,800 pages of tax code. That kind of technology did not exist before. That's called the large language model, is because it can take large amount of data and be able to make intelligent information or be able to give you information based out of that. And that gave me an idea around the fact that mortgage industry has the same problem, right? In the sense that you look at agency guidelines, whether it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, those are all hundreds and pages of guidelines. And loan officers and processors and underwriters and even consumers have to constantly be asking that question. What happens when this happens? What happens when that happens? And then you have to go back to those documents, try to find the answer from those things. So that's one thing that we have worked the LLM side, which is the large language model side of the AI, is to be able to feed all of that information. And we have created this master knowledge base, which is first of its kind in the industry, where that knowledge base is basically a master repository of every relevant information that consumers need, and loan officers need, and processors need, and potentially, I mean, even our referral partners like real estate agents need, and everything, and be able to get it in a ChatGPT kind of format where you ask it a question like a text in just a natural language question, and it pulls out the information. The other day, my processor was asking me, what's the max loan to value on an investment property? What's the minimum down payment required? And we tested it on that platform. Usually you'll have to, as I said, processors have that question all the time, or loan officers have that question all the time. And it took it 2.9 seconds to pull that information. The platform not just said, for 1 unit, this is the minimum down payment. It also said for 2 to 4 units. So it actually, we went way beyond and kind of guessed what the other question might be and gave the answer. That's just a huge amount of, it's not just a productivity tool, meaning you're able to get answers faster, but accurate information, thus helping you prevent errors. Because if you didn't have that question answered up front, maybe you moved through the loan process only to realize it's 2 weeks later that you have made a mistake. So that's a big investment that we are making into the large language model, because as it gets smarter and smarter, our goal is actually to be able to, once it has all the information around how guidelines work, our next goal with the version 2.0 is that how is it's able to actually help us structure loans. So it's able to mishmash, say, one guideline with the other and be able to even make recommendations around, oh, with this kind of a client, you should probably be going FHA or not going conforming.
Wow.
So that's the road that we are taking. But the first part of it is ready and it works. So we'll keep evolving, and that's exactly the reason why I was mentioning earlier that you need to get early into the game. Because if we did not, for example, got into that version 1.0 game, we cannot even imagine building that 2.0 that we are already thinking how to build maybe next year, if that's a possibility. If we got into the game, say 2 years later, building 1.0, it's a classic iPhone versus Samsung analogy, right? When iPhone came out in 2007, I mean, Samsung has started thinking about building a smartphone 2 years later. It took them about 7, 8 different revisions before which they were able to caught up to what the iPhone technology was. So, do you want to be a Samsung or do you want to be an iPhone? That's the question here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Wow. And do you have anything like on the consumer facing, did they experience any AI? Let's say somebody landed on Instant Mortgage. They wanted to go get, hey, let me see if I'm pre-approved.
Sure.
Did they experience any AI?
Yeah. So we actually so that part of the large language model AI is not live on the consumer side because we wanted to test. So the thing about mortgages is probably the audience knows that highly regulated industry. We do not want to release anything which is not tested. That's why we release our initial version was for the internal employees because if it even if it made a mistake, it was for our internal employees and we could still fix it. So we wanted to test it into an internal environment into versus an external. So our website visitors will start seeing that in probably 60 days once we are confident that the models really work. But we actually, I mean, it was what 2020, so 3 years back, we built mortgage industry's world's first digital human called Rachel, and that was, I mean, so we really worked the AI angle way before
Yeah.
people even talked about AI. So what Rachel is that so we are all used to conversational AI platforms like Siri and Alexa, right?
Yeah.
But the Siri and Alexa is purely audio format because we talk in because there's no human-like form for Siri and Alexa. We just talk to Siri and Alexa in an audio format. Rachel was first of its kind digital human, which worked like Siri and Alexa, but like a human. So it was way more engaging. It still is, by the way. And the funny thing is, Brandon, that I just came from Digital Mortgage Conference here in the Vegas, and in the keynote that the editor-in-chief of National Mortgage News, Heidi Petlano, did, she actually referred to Rachel in her
really?
in her speech. So that was the first talk. That's what kicked off the conference, and Rachel was mentioned as one of the pioneering technology that the mortgage industry had. So, no, we have been looking at AI for a long period of time, and that has just actually helped us to be always ahead of the competition. So we are already building the stuff that people are probably not even thinking of, let alone building it. And that's what we're excited about, and that's why we built Rachel. That's why we built the AI platform that we're building, and hopefully the consumers will be able to see that. The website visitors will be able to see that in the next, say, 60 to 90 days.
Wow, that's incredible. That I love that you're where your mind's at as far as just not just mortgage. Like you're using. I don't know. I get excited about that stuff because it's you're looking at like the bigger picture
Yes.
of everything, and now it makes a little bit more sense of how you end up in with these different things going on. Is because they kind of tie back to the forward thinking and kind of being ahead of the game. So that's really awesome. What is the best way for anyone to? I mean, if it's an agent that wants to learn more about how to get themselves out there, learn more about AI. If it's a loan officer that maybe wants to come work for Instant Mortgage or interview or something and pick your brain for whatever reason, or maybe it's a consumer that's looking to get a loan. What's the best way for them to contact you?
I think LinkedIn is the best format. I mean, I've over a period of time, my platform of choice has kind of moved around, and that's, by the way, it's an interesting conversation in itself, is because that's one of the questions I get asked all the time: is that where should I be? Should I be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn? You really need to understand the audience and who you're trying to influence, right? For most part of my career, Facebook used to be my platform of choice, is because lots of my customers were my friends on Facebook. A lot of real estate agents were in fact, out of the first, say, 3,000 connections I had, almost 2,800 of them were real estate agents, because for me, getting business from real estate agents was important. So you need to understand, where is your audience hanging out? Who are you trying to influence? Don't just have this random play. I need to look cool on Instagram. But if you're doing it for personal reasons, that's totally fine. But if you're doing it for professional reasons, you need to understand what's the end goal with this thing. So of late, of course, the audience that I want to influence a little bit more are people who are maybe slightly senior in different leadership position. Could be, we are working a lot on partnership with other PropTech fintech companies. And so influencing some of those founders is important for me. That's why I get a lot of those people on my podcast, Shashank Redemption, as well. So LinkedIn has been my preferred platform. I've been able to connect with more people. I still, of course, hang out on Facebook, very little on Instagram or Twitter or X, as it's called now. So that'll probably be the best platform to reach out to me. But yeah, search me up and anywhere. I should be able to find me. And again, with a name like Shashank Shekhar, it's not that difficult to find me. So something good comes out of it in a name like that. Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. And then thank you for touching on that point on, what, like having your plan, because you're right. There's a lot of just trying to put, I've run into it myself, like, like without a strict plan or like an idea of where you want to go, you end up posting things are like, I stay clear of LinkedIn for typically anything personal at all.
Sure. Of course.
So that's a great point there. But Shashank, thank you so much. I appreciate all of our conversations wherever we get a chance to talk. And thanks for stopping by. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you for having me.